Hey, it's model building start to finish again. This is John sitting here with Dan, looking at this flat car, that HO scale flat car that you've been working on. And I remember last time I was thinking it was done, but there's always another step.
Right. So last time we did all the paint and decals.
Yep.
So this time it's I'm going to go ahead and do the final assembly and weathering.
Oh, so that means it will be done, huh?
Hopefully, yeah.
Cool. Hey, it's a coupler.
Yeah. So I took the couplers and put them in these tweezer things to hold them and sprayed them with some Tamiya clear flat.
Okay.
Same clear flat finish I used on the model. And now I have some Testors Model Master acrylic red oxide flat paint. And I'm just going to dab it with some of that.
Is it supposed to make it look rusty or what?
Yeah. And I don't worry about doing too neat of a job with couplers because they tend to be, dirty and kind of not so even anyway. There's different ways to paint couplers, but I like this method because it's quick and easy. So even though I was dry brushing and not putting a lot of paint, I like to test to make sure that the coupler knuckles are still sprung properly.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you put too much paint on them, they could freeze up.
Yeah, that would suck.
Anyway, what I have here is some dark rusty colored weathering powder from Bragdon. And I'm just going to take the whole coupler and dunk it.
What? I don't think I've ever seen you do this before. So there's no risk of, well, I guess if the paint's dry, there's no risk it would come off. So
yeah.
So you still have to brush it off though, right?
Yeah, I can blow it off and brush it off like I usually do. Now I'm taking some black weathering powder on a micro brush and just darkening the trip pin.
All
since
right.
I'm one of those people who still leaves them on.
Might be worth mentioning what trip pins are for, and just in case people watching don't know.
Right. Well, the whole idea with the Katie couplers way back in the day with these trip pins is that they're magnetic, and you can have magnetic uncouplers in the track.
Right. So the trip pin is made out of a piece of metal.
Out of a piece of metal,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what they're for. Now, at this point, I'm not really using magnetic uncoupling, and I don't know if I will, but I have a lot of rolling stock, and I hate to cut them all off and then change my mind later. And you know what I mean? So I'd rather just leave them on there and live with the slightly prototypical appearance.
Yeah. And, I've mentioned this before. I'll mention it again. When you have them all together, it almost kind of looks like hoses. So
yeah,
right.
Kind of. So now that the couplers are weathered, I can put them back on the car.
It's really just a matter of taking the lid off of the coupler box and making sure they're seated properly.
Right. I just have to be careful because the uncoupling lever is attached now.
Yeah. Also, it's probably worth mentioning, I know we're only showing one side. Dan's doing this stuff to both sides right now. We're not just doing this lopsided.
Right.
So just FYI, right? Because I know sometimes we just don't show everything because it's redundant.
Right. So now I have some black weathering powder on a fairly stiff brush, and I'm just going to go over the underside to kind of age it a bit.
You put dull coat or whatever, clear flat on the bottom too?
Not so much on the bottom because it was already flat when I sprayed the paint. So
oh, right, because you didn't microgloss that for decals, right?
No.
Yeah.
There wasn't any reason to.
It's looking pretty dirty, Dan.
Yeah. So that's just a basic weathering on the bottom, which is probably all it really needs on the bottom because it's not going to be seen that much anyway.
Yeah, right. I mean, you're not going to be picking it up and showing, hey, look, everybody.
Yeah. So now I can go ahead and put the trucks back on. And if you watch the episode where I was fitting the trucks, in order to get the coupler height to work out, I had to use a Katie red washer on the A end.
Right. I remember it was on one end and you were trying to make sure that you were keeping them separated that way so that you wouldn't have to do the whole thing all over again where you're checking the height and all that.
Right.
Hopefully nothing else changed, right? I mean, because you're going to check the height again anyway.
I will. I mean, yeah, in theory, it should be the same.
Yeah, you haven't changed anything, right? You didn't add anything or take anything away, so
no,
should be okay.
Just paint, but that shouldn't be enough to affect it.
I don't know. Do you have a micrometer to
Well, I mean,
To
I'm sure
check.
there is some effect, but in other
That's what I mean. It would be so minuscule you you wouldn't even detect it.
right, it shouldn't be significant, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. You have some laser accurate measuring tools or something.
Okay, so I'm not sure why, but this is why I checked the coupler height again after I put the model back together. I ended up with both couplers being slightly low after I'd already adjusted them. So what I ended up having to do was move the red washer to the B end, which had been okay before. And then I put 2 gray washers on the A end. And now it's just about perfect. So,
Okay. And I know you're fussy about that stuff, so I believe you.
yeah, and I also set it up so it's not wobbly.
Right? You have the 3-point suspension.
Right.
We talked about that before.
And all the wheels are engaged, so that means this car gets a green dot.
Oh. Wow.
So we can do that.
Do you want to mention what green dot means?
Yeah,
Right.
I have this my own personal inspection system. When I have the couplers at the correct height, the trip pins are adjusted so that they're at the correct height, the wheels are all engaged, and the car has a 3-point suspension so it doesn't wobble.
Right. That means it's ready for Dan style layout.
Right. So that's my minimum requirements for a car to be in service on my layout. So once I've done that, then I put a little dot of green paint on the bottom to know that I've already dealt with that car and I don't need to worry about it anymore.
Right. So in case you thought we were joking,
Yeah.
no, he really does do this.
Yeah.
There
So
it is.
I try to put the dot in some inconspicuous place where it won't show.
Right. You'll see it though. You turn
I'll
it over,
yeah.
you'll see it.
You'll only see it if you turn it over, though. So that's it. I realize not everybody does that, but that's my thing.
Well, right, but it makes it quicker and easier to know, right? I mean, although I suppose you could just not have anything on the layout that you haven't done all that stuff to.
Yeah.
So that way, if it's on the layout, you know it's been dealt with, right? That would be another way to do it.
Right. But, not every car gets, I mean, unless you have a huge layout, if you're like me and you have a lot of rolling stock,
Yeah, it's all stored now.
it's all stored now.
Yeah.
So, especially if it's all stored, it's really more convenient to have them marked. In fact, I even go a step further on cars that have boxes. I got some little green stickers from the office supply store,
Right.
and I put a little green dot on the box too.
Yep. I've seen it.
Yeah. If you recall, I already painted the wheels. That was something I did in a previous episode. And the trucks were just airbrushed the same color as the car. And that was already flat paint, so it's a good surface for some further weathering. So I'm going to use some black weathering powder on the springs just to highlight them.
Yeah, this is that whole thing about making little details pop. I've seen this dozens of times now.
Right, and since this is a car with journal boxes, I'll put a little black there too, because those tend to get greasy.
Yeah, don't they put the oil inside those?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember seeing journal box trucks on, I think it was at Billy Jones Wildcat Railroad in Los Gatos. They had those.
Yeah. And I'm going to put a little inside this little crevice too, just to make it look a little more shadowy. Now I'm going to add a little road dust with some earth-colored powder.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a really clean flat car anywhere.
Yeah.
So you're just going to go around the entire model with that stuff?
Yeah. And then, blow it off and then use a soft brush to blend it.
I was waiting for this part.
Yeah, I'm going to start weathering the flat car deck. So what I have is some Reefer Gray acrylic paint, some more Model Master on a little brush, and I'm just going to
Dry brush.
So get most of the paint off and then just kind of streak it across the deck. This is just one step, but
Step one of several, I'm sure.
yeah. Looking at photos is really invaluable for something like this, but aged wood tends to be a little bit gray,
Mm-hmm.
so that's what I'm trying to achieve here.
And I'm guessing it's going to be gray and other colors as well.
Exactly. I'm also getting the edges of the deck a little bit with the same color.
Oh, right, because those are the same boards, right? Simulated boards.
Right. So now I'm going to do a wash on the deck that I made from some black acrylic paint thinned with Windex. And it's probably about 85% Windex and 15% paint, so it's very light.
You know, I'm always impressed with how this kind of treatment makes the seams in between the simulated boards really show a lot better.
Right. That's what I'm trying to do, is just get them to pop a little bit.
Yeah. Do you want to tell people why you thin the paint with Windex?
Yeah, the reason is well, one, Windex won't attack the underlying paint. Like if you used alcohol, that could possibly, attack the paint and cause it to strip off a little, which is not usually what you want.
Yeah, or run, right?
Yeah. And if you use regular water, the surface tension is too high.
So you get big bubbles?
Yeah. And
Possibly.
It just doesn't work as well. If you use something else, it has a much lower surface tension and it flows better.
So there you go. Because I'm sure I knew the answer, but I'm sure somebody watching was wondering why you used Windex.
Yeah.
That's why it's the surface tension.
Yeah.
Smaller bubbles.
It also dries pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And now I have some pan pastels. And this is a color called Neutral Gray Extra Dark.
Neutral gray.
Neutral gray. I'm just going over this very lightly.
You know, I think most people would look for browns and tans, right, for a wood deck.
Well,
But
you
the
can
wood-
do a little of that too.
Well, right, but the deck, though, and that's the point I want to make, the deck gets so dirty on these things, it wouldn't look very brownish for very long.
Right.
Right.
And wood really does tend to age to gray as it gets really old, rather than so much a tan color.
I resemble that remark.
Now I'm using a color called Raw Umber Tint, which is sort of a off-white or slightly tan.
Yeah, I lost track now. Is this the fourth or fifth layer of stuff, or different
It's about
color?
the fourth.
Yeah.
I'm only hitting this selectively now.
Oh, so you're streaking certain boards, kind of that kind of thing.
Right. Because, one of the things about wood like this, especially as it ages, is it doesn't all look like the same color.
Yeah, and plus maybe a board was replaced here and there or something, right?
Right. It's looking a little light to me, so now I'm going over it with some black.
So that would be 5 or 6 now.
Yeah. Well, my philosophy is that real railroad equipment doesn't age in one day.
This one does.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it ages over time, and
Yeah.
so it doesn't all get dirty on the same time or in the same place.
Yeah, that's why it has to have different colors. We've talked about that with trucks and wheels before.
Right. So I've switched to a smaller brush, and now I have some raw umber pan pastel. I'm going to go over selective boards.
Something worth mentioning, I think, is even though this is sort of repetitive and tedious and all that, it doesn't really take that long, And the results, which you'll see soon, are worth it.
Yeah, well, another thing I learned with doing models for so many years is, even if it takes a while to build one, the amount of time it spends being finished is much greater than the amount of time you spend working on it. So do it right.
Right? Yeah. And the other thing I would mention, and this is kind of a thing for me, is don't overdo it. Because I've seen stuff so overdone, and I look at it, and I just think, I've never seen anything like that before. I mean, not I've, in a sense of, it's not realistic. I've never seen anything like that in real life on the track before. That kind of reaction.
Right. Now that I've gone over individual boards with various earth tone colors, I'm using some black powder.
Black weathering powder, right?
Yeah.
Don't let it match. It might blow up.
No, not that kind of black powder. Just black weathering powder. This does a couple of things. It changes the color yet again slightly. It highlights the seams a little more. And it also dulls down the finish to a flat. Because the pan pastels leave a little bit of a sheen, I've noticed.
Mm-hmm. Weathering powders don't, though, huh?
No. So if there's too much, you can just blow it, and then always a good idea to blend it with a nice soft brush later. And just keep working down the deck. Now I have some of that same light tan weathering powder that I used on the sides of the car, and I'm just going over selected boards. Again, you can...
Yeah, that paper towel you're working on is getting pretty dirty.
Yeah. This just gives a little more variation. And you can just keep going with this until you're happy, you know.
So like you said, you go till you're satisfied with it, right?
Right. All I did was, after the last go around, I thought it was looking a little too homogeneous, so I took some more of that light tan colored powder and just very carefully with a small microbrush got some individual boards, and then used the big, brush to blend it.
Right. Looks nice.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty good.
It looks like the deck is well used.
Yeah, which is the point. And so now I think we can move on.
Yep.
So because the stake pockets don't actually have holes in them, the instructions say you can paint the tops of them black.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Optical illusion.
Right. However, that's a little bit risky.
Yeah, especially with all the work you've done on it.
Yeah, if you don't have a really steady hand and a really good little brush, it's pretty risky. So what I decided to do instead, since this is already kind of shadowy and hard to see under normal viewing conditions, is to just take a small microbrush with some black weathering powder and just go over the tops with that, just to darken them slightly. It's not quite as effective as maybe painting them black, but it's a little easier and
not as risky.
Right.
That's a good word for it, because you do risk ruining a lot of work if you did it wrong.
So I put a little drop of CA on the end of the brake wheel staff. I also cut it down so that it makes the brake wheel about 1/3 of an inch above the deck, which is what the instructions say. Actually, it says 0.350 inches, but
it should be 0.3525. 0.3525.
Yeah. Anyway, I just want to make sure that it's nice and straight while it's drying.
Yeah, it looks nice.
So the instructions say if you want to, you can use High-Tech Details number 6038 air hoses.
Very good.
And I did end up having to open up the hole in the end sill that I drilled when we were first putting the car together.
Did it get paint in it or what?
The rubber was just a little bigger than the hole that was there, so I just drilled a bigger hole until it fit.
Yep.
And I'll just secure it from the back with a drop of CA. So now I just need to put a little paint on certain parts of the hose. This is the same boxcar red that I used for the overall color.
Do you have to put little, what do they call those? Glad hands? The little silver part?
Yeah, I'll
on
use
the
a
end?
little silver for that.
Yeah.
This is absolutely one of the worst brushes that I have, too. It's just what I have here, and I don't have anything better right now, so I'm just doing this very carefully. Use a better brush, please.
Maybe I should go get a Q-tip for you. It might be better than that piece of crap.
Yeah.
That brush is terrible.
Well,
I could see the stuff flopping off the sides of it.
yeah. Well, that's good enough.
Right before you mess something up. Quit while you're ahead.
So I think that's about it.
Looks like it might be done, Dan.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. Right? Otherwise it wouldn't be on the track, huh?
Right.
Okay. Well, yeah. So this was, again, Owl Mountain, right?
Yes, Owl Mountain Models. It is the Flatcar kit for an SP F50 series flat car. It'll make either an F50-5, 8, or 9.
Cool. Well, I guess we're going to have to go and try to do a road test someplace, huh?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I get then next week on Dan's Models, right? 1 week from today, I guess we'll be running it somewhere.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out where next time.
Yeah.
See ya.
Bye.